This is Damian Lillard, and you're listening to The Briefcase with Casey Holdahl.
Greetings, Blazer fans, and welcome to The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Episode 180 of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. I am Casey Holdahl, and your Portland Trail Blazers had their NBA Cup dreams dashed last week by the San Antonio Spurs. Then they had a few days off to practice and enjoy the Thanksgiving holiday, right back to work for another game versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Close, but no cigar for the Trailblazers in that one as well. We'll talk about both those games. We'll talk about Deni Avdija and how fantastic he's been playing as of late this season, a guy who absolutely has to be in the All-Star conversation. And we'll hear from Robert Williams III on this edition of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Well, the Trailblazers entered their final game of NBA Cup Group C, Western Conference Group C play last week when they hosted the San Antonio Spurs with a chance to advance to the NBA Cup quarterfinals for the first time since they started the Cup, I believe, 3 seasons ago. Trailblazers controlling their own fate in that game, but unfortunately not able to get the victory. Trailblazers fall in that game 115-102 to end up fourth out of 5 teams in the NBA Cup. San Antonio Spurs end up winning Group C. They will move on to face the Lakers in San Antonio whenever the quarterfinals start. I believe that's next week. Once the Trailblazers were eliminated at that point in time, I don't really care a whole lot about the schedule for the NBA Cup. I'll just watch the games whenever they're on. Trailblazers had a chance in that one. Again, an opportunity where the Trailblazers actually controlled their own fate, which, as we talked about, something that the Blazers really haven't been able to do as of late. Since the past couple seasons, not really being in the conversations for the playoffs or in the postseason. So a lot of times you don't really have that notion of like, hey, if we do this, then we're going to be rewarded with this. This was an instance where they did have that opportunity. Unfortunately, they fell short in that one. Basically played it straight through the first half. Basically a tie game, back and forth game through the first half. Spurs go up 5 points into the fourth quarter, but at that point in time, the Blazers playing at home, and granted, that Spurs team, I think a lot better than people realize. They were playing without Victor Wembanyama, so I think a lot of people assume that without Wemby, that would be an easy game for the Trailblazers. Not at all the case. At that point in time, the Spurs were 11-5 and had won, I think, 3 out of their last 4, even without Victor Wembanyama. Still a lot of talent on that team, and enough talent on that team to beat out the Trailblazers, particularly in the fourth quarter. As we've seen in the last couple games, actually, Blazers go ice cold in the fourth. They scored to 16 points in the fourth quarter on 6 of 21 shooting from the field, 2 of 12 shooting from 3. 3-point shooting was an issue that entire game, as well as free throw shooting, also an issue in the entire game, but especially an issue in the fourth quarter. Blazers just go 2 of 8 from the free throw line, and actually all those attempts were from Deni Avdija. Meanwhile, De'Aaron Fox goes 3 of 6 from the field and 8 of 8 from the line to outscore the Blazers almost by himself in the quarter with 14 points. Blazers end up scoring just 16 points in that fourth quarter. That is enough to doom Portland's chances both in that game in the NBA Cup. As I mentioned, Blazers go just 9 of 36 from 3. That's 25% for those of you at home who don't feel like doing the math, and miss 11 free throws in that game. And as I talked about on a recent edition of The Briefcase, and I'll continue to talk about it, when your team like the Portland Trailblazers, when you're missing so many guys, when offense can be hard to come by sometimes anyways, missing that many free throws, you can't do it, particularly in a game that actually has a little bit of juice in it, a little bit of stakes on the line. You can't miss 11 free throws in a game when you're the Portland Trailblazers, particularly at home, and expect to come away with a win. And unfortunately, the Trailblazers did not come away with that win. Not only did they miss the free throws too, but they also, as I mentioned, just came at a bad time. Deni goes 2 of 8 from the free throw line in the fourth quarter. At one point in time, missed 4 straight free throws, which really felt like whatever momentum the Blazers had, and they didn't really have any momentum in the entire game. I mean, the fact that they were even in that game in the fourth quarter is a little bit of a miracle, because just not a very good game. You could tell the guys were tired, come back from a 3-game trip, have one day off, then get right back to it to play on Wednesday on Thanksgiving Eve. And just didn't seem like they had the requisite juice that they needed. And again, they're down guys at this point. Deni is playing point guard for the team and also defending centers for this team. So it just goes to show that everyone was pretty tired at that point. They hadn't had an extended time off until later on after that game. So the Trailblazers end up just falling short in that fourth quarter to come away with the loss. And again, if they had made some free throws, they give themselves a chance in that game. If they shoot 30% from 3 instead of 25% from 3, They probably win that game versus the Spurs, but they didn't do either of those things. Defended probably well enough to win that game, though. Letting De'Aaron Fox go off in the fourth quarter is definitely not something you want to see. Though again, I think that also speaks to a bit of a fatigue element as well. You got De'Aaron Fox, one of the fastest guys with the basketball in the NBA, in the fourth quarter, going up against a Trailblazers team that is shorthanded and has been playing a lot of games in the last couple weeks, or really to start the season. So the Blazers not able to come away with that one, unfortunately. As I mentioned, that dooms their NBA Cup Group C standings opportunities. Had a chance to advance, would have ended up most likely facing the Lakers in Los Angeles if they had won that game. Instead, it's the Spurs who will face the Lakers in San Antonio to decide which one of those teams moves on to the semifinals, which will be in Las Vegas. Deni Avdija continued his fantastic play this season. 37 points on 12 of 29 shooting from the field, 5 of 8 shooting from 3, but goes just 8 of 14 from the free throw line to go with 8 assists, 6 rebounds, and a block in nearly 40 minutes. And again, when you're playing guys that level of minutes, things like late game free throws, that's where the fatigue really starts to show itself. So it's unfortunate they couldn't get those free throws to go down, but you also kind of understand it because, again, when you're tired, when you've played a lot of games, when you're taking on a increased role as Deni is, and you're playing 40 minutes in a game with, again, some stakes on the line, that has a tendency to take it out of you. And I think we kind of saw that in the fourth quarter of that game. Jeremy Grant, 13 points on 5 of 17 shooting from the field. He missed all 5 of his three-point attempts in that game, unfortunately, which did not make him unique in that game. Pretty much everyone on the Blazers team who took a lot of three-pointers, missed a lot of three-pointers in that game. That's what happens when you go 25% from the three-point line. Jeremy also had 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal in 32 minutes in that game. 11 points for Shaedon Sharpe on 50% shooting from the field. He too missed all 3 of his three-point attempts, and that was Shaedon's first game back after missing a number of games with that sore calf injury. Shaedon has been coming off the bench as he's on a minute restriction right now. I imagine that will probably change sometime soon, potentially even on this road trip. But as of right now, Shaedon Sharpe coming off the bench. 10 points and 5 rebounds apiece for both Toumani Camara and Robert Williams III, who we'll hear from later on. Rob also had 4 blocks in that game. Really liking what we're seeing out of Rob as of late. Really feels like he's rounding into form, and hopefully he's able to stay healthy because a healthy Rob Williams makes you so much of a better team, and the Trailblazers can use basically everything that he does on both sides of the ball. De'Aaron Fox finishes that game with 37 points. Devin Vassell with 23 points. As I mentioned, the Spurs move on to face the Lakers in the quarterfinals. But as for the Trailblazers, they will now face the Pelicans in New Orleans, 1-game trip to New Orleans on December 11th, and then they will host the Warriors on December 14th to fill out their 82-game schedule. I won't get too far into it, but basically you only have 80 games on your schedule now to start the NBA season, and then those 2 games are added depending on whether or not you make the knockout round of the NBA Cup, which if the Blazers had beaten the Spurs, they would have. Otherwise, they add 2 games to your schedule, 1 at home, 1 on the road to fill out your schedule. So that second week of December, pretty light in terms of games because the Blazers only play twice, once in New Orleans versus the Pelicans and once at home versus the Warriors. On one hand, both those games, you've beaten the Warriors twice. You beat the Pelicans in the game you played in New Orleans earlier this season. So in that regard, you feel good about your chances in both of those games. On the other hand, having to go all the way to New Orleans to play 1 game is kind of a bummer. Particularly considering the team will be coming back from a 4-game road trip anyways. It finishes in Memphis, but it doesn't time out. Team will come back from Memphis, be here for a couple days, and then head right back out to New Orleans. I'm obviously not on the trip with the team. I might be at that game in New Orleans. I'm not entirely sure at this point in time, but either way, 2 winnable games there. But unfortunately for one of those, you got to travel cross country. But all the more reason the next time to try to win that game to advance in the NBA Cup. So the Trailblazers fall to the Spurs in that game on Thanksgiving Eve. Then they have a couple days off. They have Thanksgiving and then Friday and Saturday off, chance to get back into the gym, to have practices for the first time since the start of the regular season. I know people hear that and they say, like, well, how have they not have a practice? Look at the schedule and look at the way it shakes out. A couple things to remember. Teams never practice after a back-to-back. And for the most part, the Blazers stay over after road games because a decision was made a while ago to prioritize rest. And they feel like if the team stays in one place, the team is able to get more rest in that situation. So what that means is the team ends up traveling on the off days. Sometimes those travel days can be kind of long. And then by the time you get into the next city, it's already nighttime and you got a game to prepare for the next day. So it just doesn't really time out very well. And it's not all uncommon. Usually you'd have a couple practices. And also the Trailblazers, have had some things happen this season that kept them from practicing. So, the fact that the Blazers hadn't able to get in a practice since Tiago Splitter became the acting head coach. This weekend they actually did have a chance to do that before their game versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Had two really good practices. And it really, to me at least, showed in that game versus the Thunder. Trailblazers didn't end up winning that game on Sunday afternoon, the first family Sunday fun day game at Moda Center this season. Trailblazers do end up falling 123-115 Sunday afternoon to the Thunder, but in a pretty good game for the Trailblazers. Not as good of a game as the one they won versus the Thunder earlier in the season, though the Thunder had a lot more players this time around. They did that time around, but a much better effort than they turned in versus the Thunder in Oklahoma City just over a week ago. So that was nice to see as well. Trailblazers played better, but were not able to get the victory, which a number of players talked about in the post game. Everyone's always like, hey, it's not a moral victory thing. We're not saying that's the case, but we did play better. We feel like some of the things that we were a bit deficient on or that had started to slip a little bit, having a few days of practice to address those things, we really felt like had an effect in this game. We would have liked to have got the win, but we were glad that we were able to play better, and part of that reason was because of that practice time they got. So in that game, once again, without Donovan Clingan, Donovan's missed the past couple games due to illness, and if Donovan is out with an illness, you know that guy is sick, because he's not the kind of guy who is going to miss a game for the sniffles. So Donovan Clingan joins Dame, Scoot, Drew, Matisse, and Blake on the sidelines. So the Trailblazers without yet another player, so down 6 players at that point. And because of that, Tiago Splitter decides to kind of go off board with his starting lineup, ends up starting Deni, Tumani, Chris, City, and Jeremy. All 5 forwards in the starting lineup for the Trailblazers versus the Oklahoma City Thunder, and it almost worked. Much like the game versus the San Antonio Spurs, the Blazers kept it close through the first 3 quarters, despite not shooting all that well, beaten out in the fourth quarter by strong individual performances. This time, those came by way of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and AJ Mitchell, resulting in the Trailblazers once again losing 123-115. And I think a lot of that, too, is the Blazers are still learning how to win late, particularly playing against the defending NBA champs. They know how to execute late in games, and a team like the Blazers are improving in that regard, and they have some veterans who know how to do those things, but as a team, not really a whole lot of experience doing that, and so they're still having to learn how to do those things, and very often results in losses. And I think, we've seen that versus the Bulls, versus the Magic, and those were just you're talking about buzzer beaters, but then just the idea of what you need to do in the fourth quarter to come away with the victory, particularly against a team like the Thunder. Trailblazers came close, unfortunately, not able to do that, but that's something they're learning, I think, and something that I think you'll see as the season goes on. Some of those late game situations where it's close, I think you'll probably, or hopefully, I think if things go the way that the team would like for them to go, hopefully you'll see the Blazers start to win some of those games as the season goes on. They're still learning how to do that, and sometimes, that learning process can be painful, as Trailblazers have found out. So in that game, Tumani Camara goes 5 of 10 from 3, 4 from the line for 19 points to go with 8 rebounds, 4 assists in 38 minutes. Nice game for Tumani Camara. 18 points, 3 rebounds, 3 blocks, 2 assists for Jeremy Grant. 13 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists for Chris Murray. Caleb Love comes off the bench to post 12 points in 19 minutes. And then there's Deni Avdija, who once again gets another triple-double, his second of the season, going 6 of 14 from the field, 9 of 23 from the line. And that's one thing, too. You can't complain about free throw shooting in that game versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. SGA, obviously one of the best guys in terms of getting trips to the line, but he took 12 free throws in that game. Deni took almost double that many free throws. So that's one of those where you can't really complain about any of the calls that SGA got, because Deni getting to the line a lot himself, which, though, he should, considering he was being defended by Lou Dort. And particularly in the fourth quarter, Lou Dort is basically fouling 80% of the time that he's on defense. And we saw that in that game versus the Thunder. So not a surprise to see Deni Avdija get 23 free throws in that game. Was very nice to see him make 19 of those free throws in that game, giving the Blazers a chance to win that one because of that effort. So Deni finishes with 31 points in that game to go with 19 rebounds, just one off his career high. That's also his Blazer high now, to go with 10 assists in 37 minutes. Deni Avdija has been absolutely phenomenal this season in everything he's done right now. As I mentioned, He is Portland's point guard, considering that basically all of the guards on the team are out due to injuries, or at least all the point guards are out due to injury. And then Deni is very often defending the centers, as we saw versus the game versus the Thunder, very often matched up with Chet Holmgren. So you have a guy who's playing out of position on both offense and defense, playing point guard on offense, a very difficult position to play, and then defending players at center on defense, also very difficult to do. Deni has done that with aplomb this season. Absolutely deserves to be an all-star at this point in time. Deni is averaging 25.8 points, which is good for 15th in the NBA, and that puts him in between James Harden in 14th and Devin Booker in 16th. So Deni Avdija between two of the best scorers in the NBA over the last decade. He's shooting 48% from the field, 38% from three, 81% from the free throw line to go to 7.1 rebounds, which is 38th in the NBA, and 5.8 assists, which is 24th in the NBA in 34.1 minutes per game. Doing it on both sides of the floor, playing basically every position on offense, playing forward, center, and guard on defense. A lot of times in the NBA, the mantra is your position is who you defend. And as of right now, Deni is defending just about everyone. Deni became just one of 4 players in the NBA this season to have multiple 30-point triple-doubles. Nikola Jokic has 3. Cade Cunningham and James Harden also have 2, as do Deni Avdija. Deni is also one of 8 players this season to have multiple triple-doubles. With this performance to start the season, Deni Avdija is just the 3rd player in franchise history to record at least 500 points, at least 100 rebounds, and at least 100 assists in the first 20 games of the season, joining Clyde Drexler, who did so during the 1987-88, 88-89, and 91-92 seasons, and Damian Lillard, who did so in the 2017-18 and 2018-19 seasons. Deni Avdija joins those 2 players, 2 of the best in franchise history, as the only players in franchise history to put up at least 500 points, at least 1,000 assists, and at least 1,000 rebounds in his first 20 games of the season. What's more, Deni is also the first player in franchise history to post a game of at least 30 points, 15 rebounds, and 10 assists. And not only is he the first player to have ever done that, he has now done that twice. He did that Sunday versus the Thunder and last season versus the Atlanta Hawks at Moda Center on April 1st. Deni has now recorded 2 triple-doubles this season and was 1 assist away from recording yet another in the win versus the Thunder back on November 5th. He now has 4 triple-doubles in just over a season, plus with the Portland Trail Blazers, which ties him with Nicholas Batum for 5th most in franchise history when he gets 1 more triple-double, which at this point in time, if he continues to play like this, seems very likely he'll get at least 1 more triple-double in 2025, let alone this season. And if he does get 1 more, he'll move into a tie with Bill Walton with 5 triple-doubles as a Trailblazer. Clyde Drexler holds the franchise mark with 18 triple-doubles, which puts Clyde really in a class of his own in terms of triple-doubles. So if Deni is able to keep this up or even play somewhere close to this, he has to be named for his first All-Star this season, international player or otherwise. They've changed the format this season. There's going to have 3 teams. It's going to be 2 teams with U.S. players, 1 team with international players. No positions this year for All-Star voting, which I don't really know what that means for Deni's candidacy, but there are no positions for All-Star voting this year. So just the 12 best players from each conference. And then in order to fill out the teams, if there's too many international players or too many American players, they will then add a few players to make sure they have 3 even teams of 8 players or around 8 players. Again, it's kind of squishy right now how they're going to do that. As of right now, though, you assume that Luka, SGA, Nikola Jokic, Anthony Edwards, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, those guys seem like locks. LeBron probably hasn't earned it just yet, but it's hard to imagine they're going to keep LeBron James out of the All-Star game if he's at least eligible for it. I don't know if he's played enough games or will have played enough games by the time that gets to that. But you assume LeBron will probably be there as well, though Austin Reeves deserves it more if you're going to have another player from the Lakers as of right now. So roughly, I would say 4 or 5 spots up for grabs in terms of the Western Conference All-Stars, and it's still early. All-Star voting is going to start up here soon. But you consider with 4 or 5 spots in the Western Conference, if you consider all those players I just mentioned to be locks, I think you absolutely have to have Deni Avdija in there as well. He has absolutely been one of the 12 best players in the Western Conference this season. The Trailblazers are able to win some games, if they're able to get healthy, I think that's going to help Deni's candidacy as well. So Deni is doing a lot right now in place of a lot of injured players, which I think is obviously helping his candidacy. It's really helping his stats as well. So at a certain point in time, you figure there's probably going to be a little bit of a drop off when guys like Drew Holiday come back, Scoot Henderson, when he's able to get out there. You imagine that probably some of those assist numbers would probably go down for Deni. But the way that he's played so far this season, the way he's getting to the line, the way that he's defending multiple players, the way that he's playing multiple positions on the offensive end and doing so with aplomb. Again, I at this point in time, I don't think there's any argument that Deni isn't an all-star. I don't think you can point to 12 guys in the Western Conference who are playing better than Deni Avdija have this season. And I think the Blazers have a good enough record to where I don't think it's going to knock him if he continues to play as well as he's played. And if they're able to win some games, the Blazers have played the second most difficult schedule at this point. So you assume that their schedule is going to lighten up a bit here as we get closer and closer as all-star voting approaches. But either way, Deni Avdija has absolutely been one of the best players in the Western Conference through the first month and a week of the 2025-26 NBA season. If he continues to play this way, he absolutely has to be an all-star. Has never made an all-star team. Absolutely playing phenomenal basketball this year. Has to be considered an all-star if he's able to play anywhere close to the way he's played through the first month of the season. And last and certainly not least, let's go ahead and hear from Robert Williams III. Had a chance to sit down with Rob for a bit after practice this weekend. Talk to him about kind of where he's at in terms of both his fitness and his health, and in terms of kind of where he's at in his basketball career, kind of how his career has changed, how his game has changed, his approach to rehabilitation. I thought he had some really interesting comments about kind of the way that he approaches rehab. I think a guy like Rob could be mad about, the injuries he's had, and I'm sure, and he's not happy about those injuries, but kind of the mentality he takes into that rehabilitation, I think has really served him well. He also talks about being able to counsel kind of other guys on the team. Obviously, as I've talked about over and over and over again, quite a few players on this Blazers roster right now injured. Rob is a guy who I think, obviously has some experience with that and can counsel players on, their own rehabilitations, but really more the mental side of it and staying engaged and what you can do even when you're not necessarily able to get out there and play with your teammates. So we talk about that. We talk about the center rotation and kind of an interesting thing as well in that, I asked Rob about having a head coach in Thiago Splitter who's a center, for the most part, when you think about former players who are NBA coaches, they're all kind of guards for the most part, or forwards. Not a whole lot of NBA centers then get to move on to take that top spot in the coaching ranks in the NBA. And so I was curious for Rob as a center, his thoughts about playing for a head coach who was also a center in Thiago Splitter. So here's what Rob Williams had to say after practice at the team's facility in Tualatin this weekend. Really good stuff from Rob. Really appreciate the time. Give it a listen. Right here with Rob Williams III after practice in Tualatin. So Rob, first off, about a month into the season now, how do you feel like the season has gone both for the team and for yourself individually?
Yeah, I feel like for me, I feel like it's going as planned. I've been putting in a lot of work this summer just stay healthy, stay on the court, putting in a lot of work with the guys to build that chemistry. So I think it's going good. And team-wise, I think I'm really proud of the way we've been playing. We put in a new scheme a couple months ago, right before training camp, everything that happened. I feel like we're still keeping the main goal forward. And, we play faster, so it's causing a lot of fatigue. But, all teams hit walls, and I think we're hitting the wall and not running away from it. When we hit a wall, we're pushing towards it.
Absolutely. Since you did mention it, how do you feel like that style of play works for you on both sides of the floor? Obviously, trying to get quicker shots up, trying to get shots at the rim and from three on offense, and then on defense, really trying to kind of pester 94 feet, and it seems like just playing a real physical style of defense this year as well.
Yeah, I feel like on the defensive side, it helps me kind of get back to my natural defense. I'm kind of a big help side guy, big roamer. With us pressuring 94 feet, sometimes guys going to get beat with the pressure that we're applying. Sometimes guys get beat off the wing. So it's let me be, the natural roamer, be the help side guy. And offense, I feel like it's helping me learn movement a lot. I'm a cutter now, cutting a lot. And we just build off each other. So if one person is in the right spot, you feel the other spots. I mean, everybody else is in the right spot, and just keep going like that. Kind of keep it like riding a bike instead of just, in certain plays. So.
You strike me as a really smart player. How do you feel like, from a intelligence perspective, a basketball IQ perspective, playing that style, what does it require from you from a basketball knowledge perspective?
To be honest, just always on your toes, and whatever decision you make, just keep rolling with it. Because like I said, it's like a big wheel, You know what I'm saying? You kind of can't have your feet in the mud. I tell my teammates all the time, kind of just like to bounce on your toes, like, the whole time while we playing. And it's easy to, you can tell when the offense is messed up. Like if one person is messing it up, it messes up the whole wheel. So it's kind of like it's kind of hard and an easy thing once it gets rolling, but it's something we're working on.
Yeah, it's like one thing begets the next thing. And so, yeah, if one thing gets caught up, then it throws everything off.
Facts. We're trying to learn how to, once we get caught up, keep going past that and keep building and keep the wheel going. So
awesome. Your return from play, how do you feel physically right now? And how did you deal with having those injuries? Because I imagine as a player, it's got to be hard to have any injury, but then to kind of have them consecutively, I imagine at some point maybe it's a little difficult from a personal perspective.
Yeah. I feel like I've been feeling great. You know what I'm saying?
You look great.
Yeah, I've been feeling great phically, mentally. Just happy to be back on this court, man. Like I said, put a lot of work in the summer, to get my body right. And I just think with the injury wise, I feel like I look at the injury as like, I love the grind. I hate being injured. You feel what I'm saying? But that grind, you know what I'm saying? When you're going through that injury, it's like, it's unmatched. Either you're going to wake up for it and you're going to be there for it, or you're not. You feel me? And I seen the light at the end of the tunnel. Obviously around great people too, keeping their arms around me, keeping me engaged. But like, that grind mode of just getting back to yourself, I feel like that was the biggest thing, and each milestone you hit, it just reassures you that you're getting a step closer to yourself. So,
and that's a good point too, because it's a very clear goal that you have to improve physically and get back to playing. So I imagine in some respect it's motivating, or it feels like a grind, and in a good way, because that I'm making progress, I'm hitting these milestones. I can actually see the progress from day to day, whereas a lot of times you can maybe feel progress, but you don't necessarily get to see it the same way.
Yeah. So I think example of that is like, just testing. You testing the strength of all your muscles. And I would do testing and stuff early on, like in my rehab. And they would be like, well, yeah, this is getting stronger. But, for athletes, we want to be able to do. So they could tell me that was getting stronger, but I'm still not able to step on the court. So it wasn't, calculating for me. But when I started being able to box jumps, get on the court, run, check off these other things, that's when the spurt kind of like, okay, yeah, let's get back there, for sure.
It's really obvious the effect you have on this team on both sides of the floor. Like, I won't say it's like a light switch almost, but it does seem like things flip when you get out there. Can you feel that? And what do you think it is about the way that you play that really kind of gets a team going? Because it really does seem like that's the case.
Yeah, I consider myself like a playmaker. I try to make plays for all my teammates. That's just how I feel like I operate. That's how I've been my whole life. And like we were just talking in the other interview, just being that light on the bench, on the court, off the court, you know what I'm saying? Out in the regular world, being that light, being that positive perspective just to help them, stay with their heads on.
Kind of in the off-court part of that, something we did just talk about as well. You've got so many guys on the team right now, unfortunately, who are injured. And you had mentioned that you kind of talked to those guys a little bit about it, or at least try to get some guidance as someone who's had to go through those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I talk to Blake all the time. Talk to Scoot. I remember when he first got hurt, I walked to the locker room with Scoot, and I was just letting him know, it could always be worse. Everything could always be worse. I know when we get injuries, we want to hurry up and get back. We want to do whatever we can to hurry up and get back. But sometimes I tell them, you're going to work out. I know that for a fact, but take time to focus on yourself, focus on your mental, focus on what you could focus on when you were playing, because you do have this downtime, you know what I'm saying? And don't look at it as terrible. Just sharpen every aspect of your life while you can, And I think they're doing good with it.
How has your game changed throughout the years?
Yeah, I went from being kind of a young, let me do what I can to stay on the court type player, you know what I'm saying, to now I feel like I'm in a different situation. I feel like I'm slowing down. I feel like I'm knowing what I'm cutting out all the extra steps, you know what I'm saying? I'm going straight to the spot, you know what I'm saying, with the age. And I feel like mentally I'm slowing the game down a lot more. Now that the athleticism is lowering down, mentally I'm slowing the game down a lot more. It just feels good, man, because I'm used to being, when you're athletic, you jump, you run a lot, you play the game fast, you so fast. Like every time you get the ball, everything is moving so fast. So it just feels good to slow the game down. Drew's been talking to me a lot about just slowing the game down mentally.
That's awesome. What has it been like to play for Tiago? And I'm asking particularly there's a lot of former players in the league, but they're usually guards. It's pretty uncommon, I feel like, to have a center as your head coach. And so I'm wondering, as a center too, like, is there anything you've noticed from that too? Because it's just a little uncommon to have a big man be your head coach.
Yeah, the first thing I noticed was like his energy. Like I said, if Tiago could play, he'd still play right now. He's the type of guy that you would like go into war with as a coach, and he would go to war, with you. So you always got to respect that. And me and DC love it. Me, DC, Hans, Wap love it having a center as our coach, just because he doesn't let us slack. The first thing he notices is, in our opinion, is when the bigs mess up. So I feel like we need that. You know what I'm saying? First couple film sessions were about the bigs and our lack of setting screens, getting our guards better shot, which was something we needed to work on. But I just like the fact that he does call us out, a lot.
Absolutely. Last one, just what are you looking forward to going forward, physically as well too? It seems like you're starting to progress a little bit more as well there too. Minutes restrictions, I hear, are starting to loosen up a little bit. So kind of what are you looking forward to the next month and throughout the rest of the season?
To be honest, man, just being a hub for the younger guys. I got older guys I lean on like Drew, Jeremy, Dame. So just kind of being that guy for the younger guys to get them going on and off the court.
Really good stuff there from Rob. Rob was one of those guys where like I legitimately feel lucky that I get to sit down and talk to Rob about anything really, but particularly about basketball. He is a great dude. He's so smart. He's got such a great way about him. I think, outside of basketball, I think anyone could really learn kind of about life and a smart approach to life and the way to put things in the proper context from Rob Williams. Like he has such a great perspective, such a great personality, and really just an absolute joy to be around. And it's one of the reasons why, anytime people kind of talk about Rob's situation and like, well, Rob is a guy who a lot of teams would be interested in. For me, like that's got to be an actual deal because it's so great to have Rob on your team, regardless of what he's able to give you on the court, that unless you're really getting something for it, you got to keep Rob Williams on your team because the guy is he's a great dude. He helps your locker room and he's a heck of a player as well. And if Rob's able to stay healthy, we're already seeing just how great and disruptive Rob can be on defense and how effective he can be on offense. I think, that game versus the Warriors in Golden State, the Blazers won, Rob was a huge part of that. They don't win that game without Rob Williams. And, they played him the entire fourth quarter. And Tiago even mentioned after the game, he was like, I know we were probably at least at, or if not over his minutes restriction, but I just kept asking if he could give me 2 more minutes because he was so great out there. And he brings something at that center position to this team that no one else on the roster can bring. And it's when it's going well and when he's healthy and when he is in a groove, there are a few players who are better at the center position on both sides of the ball than Robert Williams III. So really hoping for Rob's sake that he's able to continue to have a run of good health and play well. And obviously it's going to mean great things for the Trailblazers if he's able to do that. And that's going to do it for this edition of The Briefcase. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, more editions this week as the team goes on yet another road trip, a 4-game road trip through Toronto, Detroit, Cleveland, Memphis, and then they'll come back. And then, as I mentioned, they'll head back out for the game versus New Orleans that was just added to their schedule as part of the consolation bracket of the NBA Cup. We'll talk about that at a later date, but since I'm not on that trip, that allows me to record some post-game podcasts, so hopefully I'll have the opportunity to do that, and hopefully with some good stuff to talk about. But until then, thank you so much for joining me. As always, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I am Casey Holdahl. You have been listening to The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Go Blazers.